The Chinese content very frequently is the might makes right type of dynamic, whereas in the US it's a much more individualistic good versus evil, or that's the good guy, that's the bad guy type of thing. And training the writers to understand that power dynamic and how to adapt it from an Eastern style to a Western style was the key to getting romance drama stuff to work, soap opera stuff to work. Again, that stuff was already like 75% of the way to being recognizable to the US audience. The really big challenge was in genres, fantasy, Eastern fantasy, again, like historical dramas. The US audience just has no frame of reference. There's a niche fan base over here that likes cultivation style novels, but the broad audience here, if you put like a Shanxia style story in front of them, they just don't know what they're looking at. So training our creatives and our producers to understand what that content is, and then their brains can start to put the pieces together in terms of, oh, that's kind of like this other book, or that's like this other thing. They can start to understand how a Eastern fantasy cultivation story could work for a US audience. And it can work very well. There are novels that have come out in the last decade here that are huge hits that are basically cultivation novels, but they're written by a Western writer with a Western storytelling understanding. So teaching writers, giving writers the tools to understand how to adapt certain types of genres for certain audiences, putting people through rigorous training on things that they've never even heard of before. It's not as complicated as it sounds, but it's also very difficult when you're trying to do it at a scale that these companies are working at. At Pocket, we were trying to put out 100 plus shows a month. Drama Box, I think they're trying to put out 25 short dramas a month. Like the scale and the speed that you're working at, if you're trying to bring in writers and talent into that space, Western people into that space who don't really know the source material, have never really understood the source material, there's a big gap between how you need to get stuff out the door and how much you can like train people to understand what they're doing so they can get good at that thing. And that's really the magic gray area that you're trying to figure out if you're one of these apps trying to get more stuff into, you could make a million CEO billionaire romances, but eventually you've made them all 20 times over. So getting people in the door that can really help you make something else that the audience here will love. That's sort of where a lot of the question marks come into play. And that's where I try to step in and help figure things out.